Welcome to Framlingham College in Conversation.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Framlingham College in Conversation. I'm Amanda James, a teacher here at the college and a former professional tennis player.
And I'm Anna, a pupil at Framlingham College.
Today we are joined by two special guests who we are talking to about an event I'm very familiar and fond of, the Framlingham Tennis Tournament. Today, Jeremy Scowsill, chairman of the tournament, and Christine Janes, who is the tournament's president, join us here, and she also happens to be my mother. Welcome to you both. So Jeremy, let's get straight into it and tell us a little bit about the tournament as it's extremely well established.
Yes, Amanda, it is. It started 140 years ago in 1883, and it originally started at Herts Hall in Saxmundham. In those days, it was a new sport, and it was the second tournament behind Wimbledon in those days. And everyone who played at Wimbledon used to come and play at what was known as the Suffolk Championships afterwards. And that was originally, as I say, played at Herts Hall. It attracted big crowds, and in fact, in the first event, 900 people came and paid to watch what was then the best tennis players in the country. In 1914, the tournament moved across to its current home, which is on the cricket ground at Framlingham College. And in that particular year, which was the first year, in fact, it never really completed because war was declared on the Wednesday of the tournament. And the men all left to sign up for the game of their lives. And I think that with regard to the tournament itself, it's a tournament for all ages. It's a week-long festival of tennis with the competitiveness of a Grade 3 tournament. 58 events from under 8s to over 65s, and plenty of spectator opportunities, swimming, golf activities, and much, much more. It's a real family day out.
Oh, wonderful. I mean, I have such happy memories of playing at Framlingham myself, and I just wonder, what do you think has enabled the tournament to continue to be so successful over such a long time period, given that we've had World War and really tough economic times?
A number of things, I suspect. Most important amongst these have been Framlingham College's willingness to host the event. But on top of that, the history, tradition, some wonderful presidents, and a tremendous group of volunteers that have had the desire to keep the event running. It is probably no coincidence that the last two chairmen, myself included, had our mothers on the Framlingham committee in the 1960s. Our own wonderful experiences as players here. I first played at the age of 7, and our love of the sport led us to want to extend that opportunity to others when we grew older. We rely heavily on money because it is voluntary. We are all volunteers. Everybody on the committee is a volunteer, but we do have to pay for referees, for court supervisors, for the accommodation and everything that we have at the college, and so we have to raise quite a lot of money. From that point of view, sponsors are absolutely key to us, and we are very lucky. We have a really good backing of sponsors who all come on the Thursday, and that is one of the reasons it's such a great day, because we have a lot of local business people who come to watch the tennis and enjoy the day. The other big part of it is patrons, and these are individuals who have a love for tennis. They're very often people who've played at the tournament themselves, and they just give us a relatively small amount a year. And because we're a charity, and we are a charitable organisation, we're able to claim a bit of tax credit on that as well. Indeed, so can they if they pay tax. So those are the key people that we need, on top of obviously as many players as possible, because the more players they have, the more entry fees we have. And in summary, what we try to do is add up all the sponsors' income, or the patrons' income, and all the fees we get for entry, and hopefully that's going to cover our costs.
And I know that you have big ambitions for the tournament for the future, and I know that you're trying to lure me back on the court with the promise of some wonderful prize money. But I also believe you've recently won an award.
Yes, we have. We applied this year we entered the LTA Tournament of the Year award. And I'm glad to say that we won the county side of this, and we then won the regional award. We're now in the final three for the national award which the result of which will be announced on 4th of July. And Christine and myself will be there at the National Tennis Centre to hear the result on that date. Reaching the last three is an accolade in itself, but to win, of course, would put us further on the map for attracting more players.
Absolutely. Well, let's hope that can happen in the future. And I was just going to ask you about your view of the tournament itself and the fact that you feel it's seen some great players on its courts, hasn't it?
Well, it has. I mean, it's we have a very long history, as I described before. And some of these names may not mean very much to younger players now, but pre-First World War, and of course we're talking about that, one of our great players was Hugh Doherty, who actually won 5 Wimbledon singles titles, 1 US Open, as well as 8 Wimbledon tennis doubles titles. At the same time, he was playing against a Herbert Barrett, who in many ways was very similar, but he was renowned in the Framlingham event because having won it 17 times, including 14 years consecutively. During the post-First World War era, many Wimbledon champions played regularly, including Henry Bunny Austin, although I don't think he actually won Wimbledon. I think he got to final. But he's stayed in our history for a long time because he was the last British player, to reach the final of Wimbledon before Andy Murray did in 2012. Post the Second World War, the Truman family of Christine, Nell and Humphrey played with Christine obviously going on to win Grand Slams. Robert Drysdale also played at Framlingham, and he went on to play in the quarterfinals at Wimbledon. Incidentally, I ball boyed his final at Framlingham. In more recent years, Henry Patton, our 2019 Open champion, is now playing in Grand Slams around the world, including at Roland Garros just 2 weeks ago.
What are your ambitions? Obviously, you've had all these amazing players in the past. Do you have ambitions to bring famous players to this tournament in the future?
Yes, absolutely, Anna. And I think that's one of the key things that I'm trying to drive forward in my tenancy as chairman. We've got this great history. We've had some great players play at the tournament, and what I'd like to do is for us to see in 2020s get the opportunity to watch someone who will go on to win Wimbledon. As simple as that. And that is something that I set out in a plan about 3 years ago, and we're moving that forward by increasing the prize money to attract better players. And I'm really hoping we will. We'll get a young lady, young man who will be coming through their young professional careers, who will come and choose to play here, and we'll get the opportunity to see them on their way up.
Yeah, because I've been lucky enough I think I played in the doubles once, and it is a fabulous tournament on the grass, because for school you don't really play on the grass, so to be able to play on the grass and experience that, it's very cool and very kind of surreal. But Christine, I have some questions for you just to bring you into the podcast. So firstly, I'm just going to ask you, obviously you're an exceptional tennis player, and I kind of want to know, you're the president of this tournament, and so how did your involvement happen?
Well, my family came to Thorpe Nest, which is nearby, for holidays, and they discovered the Framlingham tournament, and we all entered. My family, I'm one of 6, and 4 of us certainly entered. And Framlingham is one of the few tournaments left which is the backbone of British tennis, as so many tournaments have got lost. But thanks to the volunteers and the genuine local interest, and people like Jeremy have kept it going, and now making even more progress by tempting younger players who want stepping stones to the big time. They have offered prize money this year, which is considerable for a youngster trying to get going and travel, and they've got to stay in places. It's an expensive outlay, so that's a great step forward. But it is, in some way, the moment the circuit is consisting of Nottingham, Queens, Eastbourne, Wimbledon, Birmingham, and you don't arrive there. You can't just leave your school desk and arrive playing there. There's a long way to go before you get there. And tournaments like Framlingham, that's where they have their strength. They're somewhere people can start out. And certainly for me, I played when I was 11, first of all, and then 12, and then I progressed on to the senior circuit more. And my best results were when I was young. But I couldn't have done it without somewhere to get going and have competition. And the Suffolk season was very helpful because there was Felixstowe and Frinton. And so, those tournaments need to be here. And Framlingham, as I say, one of the few left.
Can you talk about, you said your best results were when you were younger. Can you kind of talk about your highlights in your career?
Well, I reached the semi-finals of Wimbledon when I was 16. I'm still the youngest British person since Lottie Dodd in 1898. So quite a long time ago. And that was a highlight and changed my life, really, because I was then included in the Whiteman Cup team and was invited. In those days, there weren't the thousands of pounds around. You had to be good enough to be invited. And so that changed my life in that respect. And I started to travel and reached the semi-finals again when I was 19 and the final of Wimbledon when I was 20. And I won the Grand Slam in Paris when I was 18. And so these were all highlights for me and made all the sort of hard work worthwhile and very motivating.
Mm-hmm. Now, I have a quote that I researched and that you said before, and it's all about pressure and how apparently you didn't feel pressure, you weren't thinking about it, you were just, it goes, I wasn't thinking, I've just been dreaming of this. Can you tell me about kind of your views on pressure, and as a young sportswoman myself, nowadays you feel kind of the pressure to perform because you've got all the social media and everything like that. And if you look at Emma Raducanu winning the US Open when she was quite young, and you look at all the pressure now and from all the social media and online, do you think it's like different from when you were younger and now from nowadays?
Well, I think possibly you and the younger generation didn't have my mother. She certainly had no time for me worrying about pressure or worrying about anything. She said, you're lucky to be doing it, you get out there and get on with it. And I had no option. And in fact, I think pressure is slightly overrated. Billie Jean King even says it's a privilege if you've achieved so much that you've got a lot expected of you. It's sort of, a highlight. And certainly, as I say, for me, mother was extremely forceful, very strict. And I remember ringing her. I was in the final of the US Open when I was 18, and I was out in New York on my own. And I was feeling a bit bothered about going to the stadium by myself and warming up, getting ready for this final. And I rang her to sort of say I was getting ready to get my transport to go to Forest Hills. I'm feeling a bit bothered. She said, don't be so ridiculous. She said, pull yourself together. She said, think what you would feel if you weren't playing in the final of the US. So I quietly said, oh, thank you for the advice, put the phone down. And that was how that was all I knew. And in many ways, it was the way it had to be, really. And it sort of, that sort of solved all those problems of worrying what might be, what might not be. Just get on with it.
Yeah, definitely.
I knew as soon as you mentioned that, Anna, because I knew what was coming about the pressure thing, and because I think it's fascinating actually listening to my mother talk about that, and actually it is a certain mindset. Mm-hmm. That I'm someone that gets quite nervous, and literally my mother would say things. Well, she said, "Well, you're lucky to be here."
Yes,
actually, but it wasn't without sympathy. So it would be, well, you can only do your best or whatever. But there was a sense of, well, aren't you lucky to have this opportunity? It was more like that than
she just didn't have the patience for. I'm one of 6 children. It was, obviously not easy at times for her after the war. So she just didn't have the patience for any sort of talk of being worried or nervous or anything. She just sort of thought, well, you've got the chance. Take it.
Do you think it helped being young with nerves? Not thinking so much about it. Do you think that helped with, that you maybe as you...
It did help with nerves for me because I just loved what I was doing, and because I was successful at a young age, I was very motivated, had a wonderful coach. I just wanted to get on and do more. But strangely enough, about 10 years ago, I played a bit of golf here in Suffolk, where I now live, near Framlingham, and I was picked for a match. And before the match, about 3 days before the match, I couldn't believe how nervous I was. And I thought, I'm now sort of in my 70s and I'm getting nervous, which I never did. So I now appreciate what people must feel like if they get like that before a match, because I never had any anything like that before my tennis matches.
I wish I could not have any nerves.
But to pick for a golf match, I suppose because wasn't trained for it. I'm not trained for it. With my tennis, I was trained for it. I had a routine. I worked for it, and that was where I was going. And there was no need or no time to even think about being nervous. I was training hard, and this is what I wanted to do.
Listening to my mother talk, I think it is, she's obviously being incredibly successful, and I think there is a certain mindset that she has that I think enables her to deal with it very well. And I think my mindset's slightly more different. And I think I certainly found I did get nervous, and I think I got more nervous as I got older. So I think when I was playing at 17, 18, I didn't feel quite the same level of nerves as I did in my 20s. Perhaps because I was more aware of the repercussions of if I won that point, this would happen, and then my ranking would move up to X or whatever. So I think I certainly probably felt nerves on a more normal scale, but it's always fascinating hearing my mother's point of view, because I think it's very much that kind of, I imagine that's more of a Novak Djokovic mindset or a Federer mindset, and you try to reach the same level, but it's hard. Yeah.
I think basically you have to be able to thrive on the big points. When it's deuce and it's 5-all in the third set, you can't afford to sort of muff it or do a poor shot. You actually thrive on that situation. And if you watch, I don't know how much sport you watch, but if you watch these crucial points, the top players will come out with something special.
Definitely.
And that's the difference. It's only a few points difference between the top and the next one's just below.
So earlier you mentioned that you had a great coach, and was it Norman Kitovitz? Am I saying that right?
Yes.
And he apparently wrote you a letter saying that it takes courage, patience, and perseverance, and the firm belief that what you were doing is right. And he also said that all champions in sport or other professions have 3 main qualities: courage, confidence, and their ability in themselves, and the correct technique. And I think these are very wise words. I'm going to take them into my sport. And he sounds like a great coach. Can you tell us a bit about him and your relationship with him, and how did he get the best out of you?
It was luck, along my route to do what I did fall on my feet along the way, and especially when I met Norman Kitovitz, because he had the same ideals as myself. He wasn't actually a tennis coach, he was more of a tennis professor, and he picked me out and volunteered to coach me when I was 15, coming up 16. And he had such belief in that I would be number one and I could be number one, and that sort of rubbed off on me. And I think you need belief that you can do something. If you set your goal, you have to believe you can do it. And I had that with him all the time. And when I lost in the US Open, I lost to Maria Bueno, and that loss meant that I was number 2 in the world and she was number 1. And had I won, I would have been number 1 in the world. And when I got back to this country, he said, no, you're not number 1 yet. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'd won a Grand Slam, I got the final of the US Open. And in a way, he was never satisfied with my performance, which was good, because I never was able to sit back and think, oh, I've done rather well, I can just relax a bit. It was always his drive that kept me wanting to get better too. And I think that was very important. And reading about Emma Raducanu, finding it difficult to find a coach, I can't think what I would have done or how I would have got on had I not had Norman Kitovitz behind me, and also always words of you can do it, keep going. And every practice session, he always made me smile. It was never a chore. And that was important too, because you have to enjoy it as well, as much as you can enjoy hitting hundreds and thousands of balls. But, that was my piece of good luck.
I think having a good coach who's encouraging, it matters definitely,
yes. And
it affects you, because you read on Twitter about all the people that have gone on to be professional athletes, and then all the people who haven't, because either, for girls, either because there's so many limitations, or because you just don't have that coach who's encouraging. And I think that's really important thing to like say on here is that like a great coach matters, and I think that's what you said as well.
Yes, because if they have belief in you, it rubs off on you. And although my aims were the same as his, to have that belief was huge. You sort of walked on courts knowing that you had the ability and the possibility of achieving your goals is very different to thinking, oh, will I, won't I? I'm not sure how I'm feeling today. All those doubts take away from your performance.
It almost links back to the pressure and how if you believe in yourself, then you probably won't feel that much pressure because you'll know you can do it and you're proud to be there.
That's right. And of course, I got a mother behind me telling me, that not to waste time, and hadn't got the patience for any sort of complaints about pressure or nerves. But Amanda was also a wonderful player in her own right. And she's playing herself, being very modest, but she actually was a very exciting player to watch. And she played at Wimbledon and was British number 2. So she reached her goals to a certain extent.
I always actually enjoy hearing about the story with Norman where, I mean, my mother talks about not feeling pressure, but I mean, there must have been a bit of self-doubt because Norman, there was that case where you got to the semi-finals of Wimbledon and he was in the stands. Is that right?
No, when I got to the final of Wimbledon...
Oh, that's right, yeah.
He, of course, had tickets. He had my tickets to watch, of course. And he couldn't. He didn't watch my final of Wimbledon because he was too nervous. But he never told me that he wasn't going to watch. And he was sitting on the seats outside in the centre court and watching the scoreboard, and somebody came past and he offered them his centre court seats. He said, well, don't you want to watch? He said, no, thank you. No, I'm not watching today. And it was the final of Wimbledon with me playing. So he did struggle himself, but he wouldn't let me know.
Bless. I'm quite into my journalism and a bit into like the podcast and everything. And moving on after tennis, I see that you had a long career on radio. Can you tell me a bit more about this and what was your role and what did you enjoy about it?
Oh, it was great. It was 34 years of sort of doing the broadcasting for the grass court season. Excuse my voice. And good luck with your journalism, because I think it's a very difficult career to get into, but so much fun had when you get there. But for me, we had wonderful teams working. We had John Inverdale, Des Lynam, John Watson, names off the top of my head, Claire Balding, and all professionals really. They became, if they weren't then, they became professionals. They did their sort of groundwork on Radio Wimbledon, and it was sort of just, I didn't know, we had sort of a good rapport between us, and so it wasn't just all results and the hardships of scores and winning and that sort of thing. It was also, there was a lightheartedness about it, and I loved it. And I was sort of sad when it was all over, and people said to me, well, how will it be for you now at Wimbledon? You're not going to be working with the BBC. But actually, I found there's quite a nice social side to Wimbledon, and I was able to enjoy that after I stopped broadcasting and meet up with friends and be wined and dined. So it wasn't the end of everything, but it was great, and good luck.
Thank you. And one last question to wrap it all up. What was your favourite place to play? Anywhere in the world, what was your favourite place?
My favourite places were always where I won. Funny that, isn't it? I think it struck that there must be such a nice place. Rome, or I would go back tomorrow. And Cape Town was another favourite place. New York, very favourite place. And these were all places I won in. And Paris, I liked. I like it even more now. I'm invited back every year because you sort of feel quite proud to be honoured in that way. And so I can't believe how much I travelled and never cared a button about getting on an aeroplane. And yet now you'd have to really drag me onto a plane. I'm watching for every sound and movement in the plane in case it's getting on fire. So it's funny, but in those days I just loved it.
So, Jeremy, remind us when the tournament takes place this year and what people can expect.
It starts on Monday the 7th of August and runs all the way through to the Saturday. There are over 50 events. In fact, I think there are 58 events. It'll be a jam-packed schedule of tennis. And as well as those LTA registered events, there are going to be a couple of fun events on the Tuesday night and Thursday, details of which you'll hopefully follow on our social media. In terms of entry, it's via our website, which is framlinghamtennis.co.uk, and all the information is on there. 2 days I'd like you to consider if you wanted to come and watch, if you're not going to come and play, are the Thursday, the 10th of August, which is the Suffolk Close Championships, which is always a very popular day, and there's some wonderful tennis to watch, and it's a very sociable day. And the final, open final day was on Saturday the 12th, which is when we hope to see the best of our tennis players playing then. And they could be coming from all over the country, and I'm still trying to persuade Amanda to come and enter that competition too. Whichever of those days come, I know Christine will be coming to both those days as well. There will be great fun. There's plenty of refreshments, lunches, teas, etc. supplied by the college. And I have to admit, for those that like another poison, on the Thursday and Saturday we're actually having a Fisher's Gin Bar in situ this year. So I hope that'll persuade you, if nothing else, to come. For any tennis enthusiast, be you a player, be you a parent, be you a spectator, either of these days will be a really great day out.
Thank you everyone for listening to this podcast. Thank you Christine and Jeremy for coming on. I hope everybody comes down and watches the tournament, and it will be a great event.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
organising.